Guys, welcome back in Inside the Pod with Lou here. Like we start every podcast with a Bible verse, and today's Bible verse that is to the book of Ezekiel 36, verse 26. And I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take you out of your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. Ezekiel 36:26. And with that being said, I'm with.
Rick Vital, however you guys want to look at me. And actually, everybody really knows my handle is Boxing Vitals, and that's my um, promotion, my media source, everything that I handle.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for stopping by on this Sunday morning and stopping by and having a conversation with us. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
definitely.
So we were at the 559 event last night by
Yeah,
Celia. We traveled out that way to go there. You're obviously close to the area.
yeah,
And then today you traveled out to see us, right? So we
yes.
appreciate it. We were there. I mean, I didn't get home till over after midnight, so I'm pretty sure I don't know what time.
I have a very short drive from there. I mean, we're talking short. So when I'm in Fresno, I'm in Fresno every day, regardless,
Yeah.
right? Most of my business is in Fresno, but I don't live in Fresno. So a lot of people think I live in Fresno, but no, I, I don't live in Fresno. I live outside, and I have a very short drive to Visalia Convention Center, and it's amazing to have that opportunity to always have it there. To do that versus always having to drive everywhere I'm at, because I go to a lot of events, I do a lot of things with events, and so yeah, having a short drive home, basically calling it home, that's the best.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So let's jump right in it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like I said, I run my media outlet as Boxing Vitals and MMA. Most people just think it's boxing. Unfortunately, yeah, I do MMA more than MMA. I do both, 50-50 on both. I attend a lot of the MMA events. I do promoting also in boxing. I do matchmaking for boxing. I do Fight for the Fallen. I promote that. Uh, for the boxing event. And then I also match make for Beat Down Promotions in San Luis Obispo. And so yeah, I'm in the mix of a lot of things, and then I help out some of the other promoters, local promotions with fighters and stuff like that. If they need fighters, I also have connections and sources of getting them fighters.
Yeah, no, like I said, I initially met you at the first event. We were at Big Dog Bare
Yeah,
Knuckle
that's the first time
up there
we
in
met.
Mono, and I was so busy working it, I didn't even really take in who like it was so many people we met.
Yeah.
And then we actually met a week later,
Yes.
prior to the July 12th event at the Save Mart Center. We met
Yes.
at Alaman Boxing, and then
Yes.
you had came up to me. We had a little conversation, and then from there we kind of knew the same people.
Yeah, we started tapping in that
Yeah.
day. As a matter of fact, like you said, we went to the Alaman boxing gym because they were holding the open workout for the event that Rick Meridian was putting on with Pro Box, and so I was invited there due to the fact that I have a relationship with them too, and and so we, like you said, we have people that we know in the middle in this, not just because of the boxing, but actually, regular
Yeah.
people that we know. And actually, earlier we just found out even more.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, we tapped in that day, and then we kind of started hitting it off. And then obviously, you having a good relationship with Larry, I have an amazing relationship with Larry too. So, just kind of started hitting it off, and and then I saw that you were hungry at what you want to do, being doing this podcasting, but you also being in the podcasting business, you got to be out there looking for, your next sources of, or tapping in at least into the source of the stuff that you want to do. So, I kind of thought, he's with Larry. We know a lot of the same people. We have relationships with people that we know mutually. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to help this guy out, and that's what I'm about, helping out people and giving back to the people that actually want to do this kind of stuff. Because, like I said, I met you over there at the Big Dog. It was your first time. I actually could have tell that you were a newbie because, like you say, you were kind of like, you know, kind of like a little lost, but I could see you were trying your hardest and you were doing actually a really good job, not knowing certain factors of what was going on. And, and here's another thing. You were actually in an event that was actually a good size event. And most people don't get those opportunities to say, hey, come to this event. Most of the time, you start out small, backyard stuff or little things, or but you went to a good size event where there was a lot of people and there was a lot of fighters and stuff. So you got thrown into, I wouldn't say you got thrown into a pond. How's that? But not a big one, but something that also like them, they're on the rise and doing a good thing. And so like I said, it was awesome seeing you there, trying to do what you like.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like I said, and thanks. Shout out to Big Dog Bare Knuckle
Yeah.
for giving us an opportunity. We were there, and it was funny because you would assume you interact with fighters, right?
Yeah.
And most times I think the perception of a fighter, they can kind of come off, intimidating.
Yeah.
And a little, but that's the complete opposite. They're human beings, just
Yeah,
like when you get to really know them.
exactly.
And it was funny because that day I was being coached by a lot of the teams, you
Yeah.
know, the coaches, and then just people part of their team. Like, hey, bro, you need to hype up the questions, and
Yeah.
you need to ask them this and ask them that. And I was like, well, this is my first event, ever. And I
Yeah.
never, and then like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So, and it ended up being great. And then it led us to working that event, led us to meeting people like yourself and
Yeah.
other people. And now we're kind of just, and as I interact with people, because I think they forget that this is an actual podcast.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, bro, well, I'm not a fighter or I'm not in the fight game. Like, no. We podcast with Central Valley Talent. Like, so
Yeah.
you can come on and like even yesterday, like you see, and thank you. Shout out to the 559 for the 559 fights for having us. We were at their 117 yesterday.
Yes.
And I get to the event and I'm still like new to it. It wasn't as bad as the first one, like as far as nerves.
Yeah.
But we get there and, right away we saw you, we saw the people that we had met there, one of the matchmakers from 559 and
Yeah.
his cousin. And we,
That was his uncle.
Yeah, his uncle. And we're shaking their hands and we're right there. And then he's like, oh, bro, watch the podcast. And it was like, oh, cool, and then we're linking up. And then like as we're interacting, I'm like, okay, where do we go sit?
Yeah.
Where do we do this? Where do we do that? And so I'm just trying to be as respectful as I can.
Exactly.
And then even when I was tell you, like, it's kind of funny, and I know we're going to get him on the podcast soon, is the referee, Daniel Manriquez.
Yes, Dan.
He was actually when I was in the academy, that was my drill instructor.
Yeah.
So.
And what's funny is that Dan, being a ex-officer himself, and he's in a position of authority inside the cage, he's a good guy, bro. I mean, you said, hey, you know what? Is that Dan Manriquez? And I said, yeah. And then he said, man, I want to tap into him. And I said, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So once we went over there, introduced you to him, and it was like, then you told him you were, who you were, and he was like, oh man, so
he's like, sorry I had to treat you like that. Like, it's all good. Bro, it's part of the game.
But that's just like I said, giving back, helping out, opening doors for people, like you said a minute ago, some of the trainers and coaches and fighters over there at the Big Dog event, they were trying to tell you, hey, gotta amp it up, pump it up, right? Well, the difference over here at 559, it's like yesterday's show, it's an amateur show, and you're over here at a pro level show. Mm-hmm. So the fighters over here at Big Dog are well experienced, different. So they were wanting you to do something that you weren't used to.
Yeah.
But over here, you probably saw a difference. You kind of had probably coached them a little bit, into the question, or they probably weren't as open because, they're coming up,
Yeah.
Into the fight world. They're making moves, that they haven't even experienced, So, but over here at Big Dog, they're experienced fighters. They already knew what to expect, and or at least thought, hey, what's he gonna drill me with today? So like I said, Big Dog doing their thing, moving up, putting the pro level fights. You came into a different atmosphere, and shout out to them. They're doing a good thing with their stuff too, and so. Like I said, over here, amateur, you were at amateur show, but that amateur show level at 559 is ran like a pro level.
Oh yeah, no,
atmosphere.
for sure.
Jeremy and them do an amazing job. Like I said, you met Daniel, their matchmaker, Daniel Quintana. Shout out to my boy Daniel.
Yeah, shout out.
Me and Daniel are really, really good friends, and like we said, me and Daniel kind of messed around doing some podcasting on our own. Just vibing and doing a lot of stuff, but like you said. You go out there and you get to meet these different people and do different things with these different organizations. So
Yeah, the networking is like, I think that's the thing that is priceless. You really
yes,
can't, buy that experience and those
no,
conversations and just in general, meeting all these people. But today's podcast is about you. So
yeah.
let's talk about how did, Boxing Vitals even start, man? I mean, kind of break it down how like you became Boxing Vitals.
So obviously that's my last name, right?
Yeah.
But so I was always a big fan of the fight game. I trained in boxing. I never fought officially like at the pro level, but my dad always watched boxing, and so like I'm a lot older than people think I am. Obviously, you thought the same thing, but I got to watch boxing when I was a kid. So with my dad, and that's how I got to grow the love of boxing. And so my dad bought me gloves and all that, you know, the bag. So I learned through my dad and that, and watching and, so I grew up watching the era of Sugar Ray Leonard, Hearns. So what they call the Kings, I watched that, as a little kid, and then obviously transitioned through Chavez and all that, De La Hoya. But me growing up where I grew up, um, I grew up in a neighborhood where it was just a bunch of kids, bro, a bunch of boys. There was really no girls in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's predominantly boys. And, so we would put the gloves on, bro, and we'd go for it, And then, everybody was older than us, meaning like I told you, my brother's a lot older than me and my sister is too. So, me being the youngest, I didn't have somebody to play with like that. So all the neighborhood kids that were in our age, there wasn't a lot. We were caught in that gap there. And so most of the people that, we hung out with, they were probably like 4 or 5 years older than us, but they didn't care, man. We played football, baseball, whatever it was. And there was always wrestling and there was always fighting and boxing. And so, we kind of grew up as a little pack of fighters. And they just kind of like I said, we'd do in the backyard or in the front yard, lace the gloves up and let's go, bro. So um, that's how I, used to just do things and love the fight game, just unfortunately I live close to the foothills, and so we didn't have like all these sources like in Fresno. And even at that time, there wasn't a lot, there wasn't a lot to say like it is today. There's gyms everywhere
Mm-hmm.
in the Central Valley. There wasn't a lot of gyms like that anyways. And the MMA wasn't even a thing then, it wasn't, so once again, I was fortunate that I can actually say that I obviously I did not attend live, but I actually watched it live. I watched the first UFC event ever, so I could say I did do that, and I found love with that too, right? So kind of then fast forward, uh, like I told you earlier, my brother and them, uh, they kind of have we have a place that we run, and then they had events there. So they actually used to have boxing there too, amateur boxing. So like I saw some of the guys that are trainers today. I was already like 19, 20 by then. I was like 20, I think, and I saw some of these guys fighting
Mm.
as kids, teenagers, and so I had a relationship with them already by then, So I kind of was always in the mix of that. And then when Tachi started having their events, like I told you earlier, I had a relationship with a friend of mine. His name was Mike, and he used to work for Christian Printup at Tachi. So I used to always be at all their events, at all their boxing events, because they started out doing boxing stuff, and they had a good relationship with Goose and Tudor Promotions. And so Goose and Tudor Promotions was like a big regional promotion here in California. And so Goose and Tudor used to come over here and they'd have events. So I'd be at all their events all the time, bro. Just pretty much like you saw yesterday, I was right there. Just social media didn't exist then. So you didn't, I was just a fan sitting there. And then I remember, I kind of moved away for a little bit. I moved to Sacramento. I was living in Sacramento, going to school, and then made a transition, came back, and then Christian Print Up and them, where they were still promoting stuff there at Tachi, and then they put their events with MMA, and that was the first time I got to actually see MMA live.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing WEC back then, and so I remember the first one they had. It was people that you really didn't know because you weren't tapped into that way. Anything you got to see back then was magazines or whatever you saw on TV. And there wasn't a lot of outlets that were putting these people out. But Dan Severn was their main event there, bro. And nobody knew who Dan Severn was unless you were in the fight world. Dan Severn's actually, you always say the beast, but he was a beast of a man, bro. So there was this individual who's a UFC legend now, starting out there at Tachi, bro. So I remember going to these events, and then I started seeing other people, that were in these events. But by then, I was a little bit older now, and then I was not kind of doing anything with anything. I wasn't boxing or, all of us guys went separate ways and started doing different things. And I was just a fan on that side now, and like I remember watching Cole Escovedo, who's a local guy here, local legend, just about the same time that LeVar and them were fighting too. So I remember seeing all these guys there, Uriah Faber. I remember at one of the Goose and Tudor promotion events, I got introduced to Nick Diaz.
Oh, wow.
So, and I remember Nick was only like 18 years old then, young buck. And I remember one of my friends, that was there as a fan who didn't know much about the MMA scene. He goes, "Hey, who's that youngster you guys were talking to?" And I told him, "Oh, it's an up and coming fighter, bro. His name is Nick Diaz." And he goes, Who is he?" And I go, "Well, he's from Stockton. He's in the MMA scene." And this is exactly, and I remember this because I've told this individual that, they ain't going to do nothing. Because MMA was not what it is today.
Yeah.
Boxing was still up here, and MMA was, at a different, they were on the come up,
Yeah.
Although UFC was popular, but UFC wasn't like where it's at today either.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like a spectacle show, more of anything at that time, and then WEC and them structured different, and they started doing different things. So, I got to see those in the inception of that. So I became a big fan of MMA because of all that, because now I got to see it live and see all these different people. And then, like I said, I didn't know LeVar like that then, and I didn't know Cole. I just knew they were local guys because, they were pushing the local stuff, and, but I got to see these events, and I remember one too. The time I told this to Daniel Quintana because, like I said, we messed around with podcasting ourselves, and we tried to, do an episode one day, and I sat down in my seat where they had assigned me to sit at, right there front row, and sitting right here next to Frank Shamrock.
Shoot, yeah.
So legend right there, bro. But not knowing that he was going to be a legend like that.
Yeah.
These guys, WC was like a subdivision or a small division, but they had a lot of the big names, in the business that are legends today. A lot of people fought there, and so but you didn't realize that, and you didn't really think about it like that back then. And so just became a fan. And obviously there was no like I said, media, nothing like that. So I was just a fan on that side, but I started, like you said, meeting people, being in touch with people. And so, that's where the love of the game really grew for me. And then, I remember too, one time, the Best Damn Sports Show actually was there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
The Best Damn Sports Show was actually had an event there at Tachi. right? And so it's Chris Rosen, John Sally, James Toney, and
And Dan Aykroyd, right?
no, uh,
No, Tom Arnold.
Tom Arnold,
Tom Arnold.
right?
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, like I said, I had a good relationship with some of the guys that worked there, and I remember this like it was yesterday, bro. So was hanging out, you know, with my friends that had association there, and I had cigars because I don't smoke as much as I used to cigars. I still do smoke cigars, but not like I did then. And I pulled out a cigar, fired it up, you know, and I had some extra ones, and you know, we're drinking right there and standing BSing with people, and James Toney comes down from the podium, the stand where they're doing the show, and goes, "Hey, got a cigar?" And I was like, "Yeah, bro."
James Toney, the boxer?
Yes, world champion, legend, James Toney. So I give him a cigar, you know, and then John Sally comes and says, "Hey, what about me?" And what was amazing about that moment, bro, is that John Sally's a huge man. Like he's a
Yeah, it was a
ex
pro
NBA
basketball. Yeah.
pro basketball player, and he shakes my hand, bro, and his hands were huge, bro, like dwarf my hand, right? And so I give him a cigar, we're chopping it up right there, and then James Toney actually brings out a bottle, and so we're sharing a bottle with James Toney, you know, just putting it in our cup, and we're smoking cigars and BSing, and by the end of the show, James Toney actually gives me the actual Best Damn Sports Show logo that they had on their front of their desk podium. Signs it. John Sally signs it. They give it to me, bro.
Oh,
So
shoot.
yeah. So like
That's
I said,
cool.
I've been around a lot of this stuff, you know, but just you know had a moment like that, and so I mean, big fan of the fight game, and then just kind of went away from it for a little bit, you know, like I said a minute ago, you know, we just kind of evolve and start doing things, you know, started, you know, my career in the real world, you know, and doing different things, and then kind of went away, and then social media came in, you know, and then you can start tapping into different outlets and different people, and you know, and I started getting on social media, and I remember posting something about a fight, and then somebody brought up about a specific fighter, and I was at that fight, and I posted. And I say, "Hey, I was at that fight, man. I watched that fight. That's not how it went down." And then what was funny was that individual, you know, reposted, and the actual fighter answered to what was going on. You know, he's a retired fighter, and so I just kind of got a little, kind of like a little good push and a little good push on that comment and argument that we were having. You know, it's basically a debate, you know, with people on social media, you know, and so individual said, "You know what, you know stuff about boxing, you know, because a lot of people do and don't, you know, and social media is different, you know," and so we tapped in like that, and then you know said, "Hey, I was there at this, that," and then you know, kind of same thing like you know when we started talking, me and you started talking, you know, we started knowing other people, and you know I knew this person, that person, and then it was funny because they brought up another thing, and I was at that event too, and it just happened that you know other people tapped in too and started saying, "Hey, like, who are you?" You know, like I start chatting, and then you know just kind of like, "Hey, this individual tells me you should," because at that time I didn't have my name as what it is today for my social media, you know, thing. It was just I just had a random name, you know, and so that individual tells me you need to do this, that, change all that. Don't they need to start knowing who you are as an entity? Don't do that. And so, and as a matter of fact, she's pretty big in the business right now. So in the boxing business, she's doing some big things, and you know, I I don't have the same relationship I used to have with her, but you know, my boy Mike Dreda, he still does. So, but she's the one who kind of told me what to do with the social media version of stuff, and
Yeah.
because she knew that I knew a lot about it, and and so I always thank her for all that advice, and that's why I kind of think I do it too for others, because when I see somebody who can who wants to do this, or knows what they're doing, sometimes you need a little bit of guidance. And so, like I say, she guided me, she helped me out with those things. And like I said, I don't have that relationship with her anymore, but if I see her, I thank her again, once again, and a million times over, bro. So but getting back to that, then I started you know pushing my brand, and doing different things, and trying to make myself visible out there. And it just kind of started evolving and doing its own thing, based on the simple fact that I had the knowledge about the fight game and all these other things. And being at certain events and being able to talk about certain events. And so I was able to generate that and move forward from it. And to this day, I'm where I'm at today, just for the simple fact that I just kind of started pushing all these different things for myself.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, so how does it, obviously, I think you broke it down a little bit with your story now, but like, how'd you get into matchmaking?
So with the matchmaking, just kind of I started building relationships with different clubs, different fighters, and then obviously having the knowledge of the fight game. Like I said, don't get me wrong, I was never a professional fighter, but with all my knowledge of what I used to do, I did train before. Last time I actually sparred, I sparred in Sacramento while I was living over there, and trained over there for like a year. Did a lot of sparring over there, so I know the fight game. Been in it, so just kind of how to you see the talent, and then you start being able to understand what you can do with certain fighters and certain things. So that's how I started. Just kind of like I had told you earlier. I met up with the same thing is I met up with Richard Ortiz. We just kind of had some mutual friends too. We just didn't know that initially, and then Richard saw my knowledge of the game and my hunger towards trying to build where I was trying to move forward to, and he put me on to certain things, and then met Ernie Hyman, and then helped him out with his events, and then I was just in the background. Nobody really knew. Everybody just always thinks that I'm just the guy shooting pictures or posting things, but I actually was doing a lot of other things with him, helping him out, logistic wise, putting the events on, finding fighters, whatever it was, right? I even DJ'd the events. So nobody knows all these things, right? Everybody's, like I said, a lot of people just think, this dude just does that, right? But in the background, I was doing all those other things.
Well, we know now.
And so then, I ended up doing the Fight for the Fallen, and it was like some same thing. Me and Ernie got together. Ernie said, "Hey, we have this opportunity. Let's do this." And once again, like I said, Ernie was always the front guy. Ernie's always, like I said, me and him have an amazing relationship. Thanks to Richard. And
Richard's the fighter's voice, right?
yes,
Yeah.
the fighter's voice.
Shout out to the fighter's voice.
Yeah, and then
And Jaime Ernie.
yeah,
Ernie
and
Jaime.
so he was out there hustling, doing all the stuff he needed to do. Logistic wise, sponsorships, trying to do whatever it, find the place to venues and all that. And I was out there helping him put the fights together and trying to find the fighters, and and so that's what I was doing. Just been doing that, and then obviously I took it over. Ernie kind of stepped back, and so, but yeah, I came up with the name. I came up with the logos. So, you know,
For Fight for the Fallen.
Fight for the Fallen. So, and it's been good, bro. Just we built that name, we built that organization to help, give back to the community. What people don't understand is that we don't charge our fighters. We actually give back to the fighters. Guys that are trying to come up, because obviously now being in tap with what's going on, you figured out, that some of these fighters, they don't get paid, especially if you're an amateur or whatever, sponsorships. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of sponsorships out there for them, so some of these guys are putting in their own personal time, money out of pocket, trainers out of pocket, gas, all this stuff, bro, and so what we try to do with our event is basically not make it cost anything for them. The only thing that's really costing is just their time, but at the same time, they're getting a push and value out of what comes out of our organization and event. We do award championship belts for those events that are worthy of a championship level fight. And so, we try to get sponsorship that gives back to them too. So like any of the equipment that they get to use, like let's just say, for instance, at one of the fights, they got some very high level professional boxing gloves that they get to keep. That's theirs, and if anybody knows anything about boxing gloves, they're not cheap. A good set of gloves can set you back anywhere between $200 to $400-$500 a glove. A set of gloves, and so at that event, they took home some hardware, which was a belt, and they took home some high dollar gloves, that they belong to them, so they can use them, when they were going to the next level. And like currently, we have one of the fighters that started, the amateur level and is a pro fighter now. So we have guys that started with us and going up. So we try to help them too. And I don't know if you saw, we try to do things a little bit different, than most other organizations at our level. We try to give them that pro level format so they can learn and understand where they're going to the next level, right? So we don't really do what we call meet and greet. We actually call it a media day. Press day. So, we invite people, we give them that platform so they can hone their skills on the mic and be in front of a camera, and they get questions asked, and so other organizations aren't doing that, bro. So that was another inception that I brought in because I think a little bit different. I think out the box, and so luckily, like I said, honing my skills with Ernie and them too, doing all these different things, helped me develop those skills and put my ideas out there, and like I said, Richard Ortiz was also one of those fundamental pieces to what we were doing, because, he was always our guy asking the questions, and he knows what to ask. He's very, very intelligent when it comes to asking those type of questions, and so, our thing just kind of like people have liked that portion that we're doing in our environment. Not everybody does it. Everybody does, like I told you earlier. I think a lot of people do their own thing, and what works for them works for them. Everybody thinks certain things are cookie cutter. Not everybody's like that. Everybody has different rules, different visions. So they follow their visions, and so we just have ours. And I'm lucky that it's worked for us. But I also think about how we're going to do things and where we're going to do things. We had a good run with Full Circle. Full Circle, unfortunately, they're not doing events. So we had to, restructure and think about it again. And then, so we ended up at the Wake House, which is an amazing place, I think, for fights. I know a lot of people say, we want to see fights inside, indoors. Well, most of the fights never started indoors, bro. They were always outdoor atmosphere. And so to me, I kind of, like I said, old school, with when it comes to the fight game, and so I envisioned when I went out there, I saw the ring and everything. And what's funny is that I don't show everything to everybody that I do. Like I said, I have a lot of skills when it comes to doing things. So like I do all the posters. I do everything myself. Everything's in house. I don't source out anything. And I'm going to tell you why I don't source out anything is because so when this individual had told me, "Hey, you got to make yourself an entity," I took her advice, right? And I made this like generic cheap poster, right? Like it was kind of like a cut and paste cookie cutter thing, and it just wasn't what I wanted or envisioned for what I wanted, but it was out there, right? So I was getting this movement, and I said, you know what? I want to have a real brand. I want it to look like something that would really represent me because the other thing wasn't. The other thing was just a generic format. And I reached out to this individual. I don't like to point fingers and aim out fingers, but this individual had some good notoriety going for him, making some amazing things, posters, and sent him a message. And I asked him, "Hey, can you do me a logo?" Right? And his message to me was, "You can't afford me." And I was kind of like, really? Like, this guy don't even know me like that. All right. So pissed me off. And I got on YouTube and looked up some videos. And I said, "Hey, you know what? What is wrong with me, man? I design stuff. I went to school for this." So I already knew the formats and programs, and then just kind of started doing my own thing. And then after that, I said, screw it. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Some of my initial infancy posters were kind of shitty,
Yeah.
but they were getting better and better every time I made a poster or every time I did different things, And so that's why it happened that way, bro. So I kind of started I made my own, and today I've messed around with different formats of my brand name, but that one that I initially made with the crown that really like solidified who my name is the one, that I always refer to and go back to. And so, but yeah, that's why I don't source nothing out no more. It's like, you know what, I can do it myself.
Yeah.
Why am I going to source it out when I know how to do it? And so, same thing with all the other things, like the other day when we had that event, I didn't pay a lighting crew because I know how to do it myself. So I went out there and I put all the lighting myself,
For the one at the wake house.
Yes, the one at the wake house. And so when getting back to that, what I said, what I envisioned at the wake house, I remember Ernie asking me, "Hey, so what are you going to do out here?" Like, man, I don't. What do you think? They've had other events here, and I go, "Well, we're not other events. We're not going to follow their format because I don't want people to say that we're just doing what they do, right? Or we're copying what they do, So I generated a actual picture that looks like the what was there, and I actually put a ring in where I wanted the ring, structure and everything, banners and everything, just how it should be, right? And that's what I did.
There you
That's
go.
actually what I put on the computer is what I put out there. So
Yeah, and it was a good event. I mean, it was our first real boxing event. I
yeah.
mean, no, second, because we had already done that.
But you guys did
July.
Big Dog, so
We did Big Dog, but then we did the July 12th one too.
yeah.
And then that was our first. But I don't count Big Dog as far as because I didn't really get to watch the fights. I worked it.
Yeah, you worked it. So yeah, in kind of in a retrospect, like you're saying, when you're working events, you don't get to see the event like people who's sitting on the other side. So you miss a lot of things. So,
yeah, so like that, and then obviously we watched the one at the July 12th, but that was more of a professional
yeah,
aspect. And then I got to see your guys's, and that was the first time we actually got to sit there and watch the fights. And it was an experience. And we liked it. And the thing about people that don't know either is my wife is my camera girl. So like
Yeah.
every time we're going out, she's the one taking the pictures. I'm doing the connections. I'm the one networking. So
Yeah.
like yesterday, talking to Manriquez and your buddy Daniel and
Yeah.
yourself and just people that we meet, all the fighters. Like when we went to the back yesterday, obviously, it didn't go for the people that podcasted with Robert and Matthew, but they both had great attitudes about it. They were like, "Hey, we're gonna bounce back."
Yeah.
But we still did an interview with them. I mean, it was a hard interview because obviously they didn't, there wasn't the outcome they wanted.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think what I wanted to show people was, and I'm going to touch on a little bit now about like how this podcast started. It's all faith based, and so I told them a righteous man falls 7 times, continues to get back up. Right.
Yeah.
I feel like my favorite Bible verse, Isaiah 60:22, when the time is right, the Lord will make it happen. So it's about timing.
Yeah.
And I thought they both had, champion like mindsets, attitudes. They both were like, "Hey, we're gonna bounce back." It happens. All right, cool. Like, then we ended up talking. It was kind of when Robert went in his thing. The champ came out, the new heavyweight champ.
Yes.
While me working in media now, right?
Yeah.
He comes, he shakes my hand, we get a picture, we talk. He's like, "Hey, let's exchange information." Well, both of us, right? And then now we might get him on a podcast.
You know what's crazy? He's not even local. He's from Alaska.
Really?
Yes, he's not even local. He's from Alaska. So, which is great that you guys did that because, that's going to give him an opportunity to expand his potential and people see what he's doing. But yeah, like you said, it's a whole different aspect when you're on the other side. Like I saw Matthew come and say,
Oh yeah.
come talk to you
Yeah.
after the fact that he had just, lost his belt, but still had time to come and say hi to you, talk to you for a quick second before he had to go back, to the locker room, which is like I said, you build these relationships with these fighters, and that's what you want. You want to do that way. People see you're genuine about what you do, and that's what I've always done too. I try to build these relationships with the fighters, and, and the organizations, and the people they're involved with. That way, they understand that you're not just there, for your own purpose, but you're there to give back to them, because without them, you can't have these events.
That's
without
true.
them, the people aren't going to come, bro. So I always look at it when we do our event is that way, because they're not there for me. They're there for the fighter, and the fighter's bringing these people in. And so, but at the same time, I look at things a little bit different as on the promoting side. And that's why I do things a little bit different also. Like, we've had rappers in our events as somebody who's like when they have that intermission time. When we have our intermission time, we usually have entertainment on our time, or we have a DJ doing stuff on that time. So we've had rappers. This time we had a Mexican band, and currently, take it how it is or whatever, Mexican music's on the rise, bro, big time. A lot of, bands out there doing big things, corridos, and we actually have some of the biggest bands here locally. So one of the youngsters that I met, while I was at the gym, looking for talent like I always am, and was working out with this boxer who's actually fought for us, and at the gym with him, helping train him and stuff and doing things with him. I met this other kid, right, that went to school with my son, and that was there. And he actually was the one who turned me on to these youngsters, because these kids that performed the other day, they're in high school, and they're that talented.
Yeah,
so,
they did good.
So I felt like they deserve the spotlight, to be on there and do their thing, and give them a push so that Central Valley and everyone else could see what they're all about, and we got a lot of positive feedback from a lot of people, and, help them out, give them a platform so that people could see what kind of talent. The week, I think 2 weeks prior to them being there with us, they actually performed at their own very high school, in their quad. So, and, you know, like I said, I got people everywhere. So,
Yeah,
they're like,
no,
hey,
for sure.
these guys they had the whole school watching them. So these kids are talented. And so, we gave them that platform, you know, and it worked out for us and it worked out for them. Like I said, it's always about giving back to them, you know, and we also had Brandon, Lost Boy,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Very talented.
perform. He's an amazing kid, bro. Brandon's just this guy that, you know, multi-talented. He's he does videos. He's a videographer, photographer, uh, music artist. You name it. That kid's good, bro.
Yeah, no.
So
I see it. We follow each other on social media now, and I see all the stuff he has his hands in.
yeah,
And it does take a lot of talent to be able to say, yeah, you're in the fight game, you're music,
yes,
you're doing videos, you're doing editing, you're a photographer. Like,
yeah,
bro, I could barely even turn the computer on and get it started. I feel like I've been blessed with my wife to be in the background as far as the editing and the
yeah.
photography, but I know it's not easy.
So yeah, he hit me up and I said, hey, bro, stage is yours. Handle your business. So like I said, I've had a good relationship with him. So I he asked for that. You know, time slot. And I gave it to him. It was amazing too. And then he brought a couple of other guys with him. So he did his solo, and then they did that, and it was just like, like I said, we envision different things, and I vibe and collaborate with other people that have, you know, those skill sets and different outlooks. Because, like I said, we don't want to be the same as everyone else. We don't want to be viewed as the same, because you go to different events and everybody says, oh, it's the same type of event, And like I said, every event is different when it comes to how they run things. But at the same time, we don't want to be the same event. If you go, to LA or whatever, and then they'll say, oh, the same thing. No, ours is different. That's why people come to ours. And so you kind of take and learn from different things that you see out there, And so that's why, to me, I think our events do well. Our events, people want to come and see what's next, And then we always put some good fights, We always put some of the best fights out there, We took a risk, because we never used to do anything with the younger, people that aren't adults, But I had been telling Ernie a while back, about the Pius kids. I told him, hey, these guys are fighters, bro. They come from a fight family. That's all they do. They live, eat, breathe, fight. And so me having a good relationship with Josh Simpson, and I'm always around that.
Come up, kid, right?
Yeah, come up here, Josh Simpson. I'm always around the gym that he previously was with, and got when you see talent, you know talent, and so I put on little Mikey, and then my boy Isidro Choa, Christian's brother, he had another multi-talented kid too, last name's Contreras, and we were like, man, these two kids put on a good fight, and so Ernie kind of was against it initially, but me knowing what I know about the fight game, put them on. They put a heck of a fight. I mean, good fight, And then we did a rematch, and it was another good fight. So then I said, you know what? We got to give these guys an opportunity to win a belt, So they were our first, like, guess you could say junior level fighters coming up, And so we did a trilogy fight with them, and
And that was that day that we went, right?
yeah, that was the day you went. Mm-hmm. And once again, another great fight, And they both showed up to do their job, and then crowned a new champion, and which is Michael Paez. And so, and then, like I said, just that's what we do, bro. Try to take different risks, do different things, change it up. We've had a lot of, like I said, a lot of multi-talented people come into our events and fight for us, And it's just been good, bro.
Yeah, no, I think, and shout out to the Pius family as well. Chris and his Mikey's dad reached out,
Yes.
and we've been having conversations too. Hopefully, we get them on the podcast in the upcoming future. And just in general, like I said, that's come back to the networking, right?
Yeah.
And you go work, you walk these events, and what you guys are doing for these young fighters is that's what the podcast is for. It's for Central Valley talent.
Yeah.
We're not only in the fight game. I've interviewed. We do Friday Night Lights, so we've been doing the high school football, with
Yeah.
the West
I
Side.
saw that.
We started doing like teachers,
Yeah.
principals, other athletes that are not in the fight game,
Yeah.
and just in general, pretty much small businesses. So like I want to incorporate all that because there's so much talent
Yeah.
out there that I feel like a lot of people don't really get to know or see.
And
But,
it's true.
yeah.
Well, it's like we talked earlier. I'm a big. I push big for small business, for local business, because corporate business is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I shop at corporate business because you have to, right?
Yeah.
It's just how our world is. But at the same time, if I don't have to, I won't. A lot of places I eat, it's all the local. I eat a lot of local places. I push for their local places. I put, pictures and location for them. When I think, they deserve to be put out there
Are recognized.
or recognized, for their food or whatever they're doing. Same thing, like I said earlier. I'd rather skip going to a big business corporation where I have to bag my own stuff and have to get my product that I'm looking for myself in this gigantic warehouse, where I can go to a small business and I may pay $1 or $2 more, but I'm getting my service where somebody actually asks me or greets me and asks me what I need or how I can help you, because that's the era I came from. All the stuff that's out there today, bro, it's a whole different atmosphere, and it's kind of like, we're just getting away from that, and that's why I always refer back to different things when I do our promotions and I do our events. It's like, how can I help them feel like they're coming to something they want to come back to?
Yeah.
And so, that's what we do. Obviously, we were supposed to have a show October 4th for, Fight for the
I was
Fallen.
trying to push that in, but you were, I
Yeah.
didn't want to cut you off, but cool. Good
Fight-
timing.
Fight for the Fallen 5. Unfortunately, we had to pull that, pull that event. We're still having our car show, so come out and support the car show.
It's going to be at Club One Casino, right?
At Club One Casino. We just had
to
to
see
pull.
some cool cars.
Yeah.
Club One Casino's always had good food, and if you're a
Yeah.
gambler, poker player, go out there and
Yeah,
have
definitely.
some fun.
Shout out to Club One Casino, But at the same time, we had to pull back. We just kind of had to. There was just some things that
It didn't align.
it didn't align, and I'm gonna tell you why it didn't align. This was my view, and this was also, the viewpoint was this, that we've worked so hard to get our show to where it's at that we don't want to scale it down. And so I always I always strive to make every show better. And so I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to provide that. And that's why I was getting back to the service. If I'm giving you this and that's what my clients expect, and then I give you subpar, then maybe they're going to say, I don't know if I want to go back to the next one because the last one was not that good.
Yeah.
Right. And so we were like, hey, you know what? We're going to put all this in to basically serve subpar, Nah, let's not do that, So we're going to restructure the date. Hopefully we're going to come back late January, February. And
So 2026 is when we're going to see
2026.
Fight for the Fallen 5 potentially.
Club One should be done with their restructuring of their building. So hopefully we're going to be inside in January, February, an inside indoor event.
Yeah, it'd be cold too. So
yeah, that's where we're heading towards. We're just moving, like I said, the meter higher, pushing to make better events and doing bigger and better stuff all the time, bro. That's the only way you can keep your fans coming back, giving them a good show and giving them a good atmosphere to be at. And obviously, our fighters that come fight for us, try to give them the best fights available, and we always appreciate, like I said, it's not about me. It's not about putting us here. It's about putting the fighter and showing them that it's a show that they want to come back to,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that consistency is key. You
Yes,
know,
definitely.
when you're trying to put a product out, and like you said, people eventually get. That's why it's so hard when you do so well on an event and you're up
Yes.
here. You will
Yeah.
constantly want to get here, right? And so if you come here and then you come here and then you come here,
Yeah.
you're not living up to the expectations, right?
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, every show is different, hard. You got a lot of ups and downs, like this last show initially. I mean, had a lot of fighters lined up.
You're talking about the Wake House one?
Yes, at the
Okay.
Wake House, we had a lot of fighters lined up. I mean, my job was so easy that I had too many fighters to say, hey, you know what? We're going to go with this, and that, right? I mean, literally, people were just, hey, I want to be on. I want to be on. I want to be on. And I wasn't like making phone calls and trying to find people like I had previously in other, at the beginning of what we were trying to do. And obviously, they've been seeing what we do and the quality and the atmosphere and the crowd. We average anywhere between 600 to 800 to 1,000 people at our events. So other boxing events aren't doing that here in Fresno unless you're doing stuff with Rick Merigian, at
Yeah.
Save Mart.
Shout out
That's,
Promoter 559.
yeah, that they're big events. They got they're associated to Golden Boy or Pro Box or whatever. Big time promotions. We're nowhere near that level. But for us to pull what we were pulling, fighters are wanting to be on that platform now. And so with this, like I said, we initially had a lot of fighters lined up. We were like, oh man, we got all this, we got this, we got that. Awesome. So I was just focused on putting the event, structuring the event, coming up with different ideas, what we're going to do at the Wake House, this, lining up, our media days, all these different things, right? Then little by little, people start falling out. People start doing this. All these different things start happening, right? Then those fighters that we didn't take on initially, because initially we could have had like 17 fights, really. But to me, that's a lot of fights. I just
What's the ideal amount of fights for a card?
so for the way I do things, like I said, everybody does and can do however they want, But the way I do things and the way, me and Ernie have done in the past, we're shooting for anywhere between 8 to 10 fights, right? I usually book 12. Why? Because I know by the time it comes to fight night, we're going to have 10 to 9, right? So I book 12.
Shoot a little over just
I
in
always
case.
shoot over, right? Always shoot over. Like I said, we could have officially had like 17 fights initially, and then because we could have had more, as a matter of fact, because we had just so much people wanting to be on. But like I said, we kind of had already a big mega fight as our main card. Local guy, El Tarasco, out of Reedley. Then we had, Donovan Lewis, big name here in Central Valley. One of the, best non-signed amateur fighters in the heavyweight division. So
And that card, that fight fell apart, right?
that fight fell apart. And then little by little, other things started falling apart. So like I said, we shoot for 12. We ended up with 9 cards, and then you know, then other things happened. Luckily, like I said, I have an amazing relationship with Josh Simpson, you know, and he says, "Hey, I want stepped in, bro."
because he's gonna be on the October 19th card, right?
Yes,
The pro for MMA.
yeah, he's fighting Raul Rosa's brother, younger brother, you know. So
Raul Rosas, the UFC.
yeah, the UFC
Oh, wow.
fighter, you know, he's fighting his brother, and so
We got to get come. Well, he said he'll come on. So
yeah,
we got to maybe get him on before the October 19th card.
let me know, and I could set that up, you know. And so I've had this relationship with Josh for a long time, you know. It's a funny story, but you know, I remember I actually went to go do something with another fighter. Shout out to George Burgos.
Shout out.
So I already had a relationship with George, and actually went to go see another fighter that was at the gym. And but I stopped, talked to George, say, "Hey George, how's it going?" You know, blah 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 blah. I was gonna go talk to the other person. Had some stuff going on with this individual. So Josh is right there with George. They're always training. You know, they have a good relationship too. They're always training and doing stuff together. You know, it's like in any gym, you always kind of gravitate to one or two people, and you always have that bond relationship. And that's what those two had at the time and still have. Josh is new, up and coming. You know, just a random kid, bro. I mean, literally still a kid. You know, I think he was like 18 years old at the time. And he goes, "Hey, what about me?" That's exactly how he tells me. "Hey, what about me?" Like, I go, "Hey, you know," he introduced himself to me. He goes, you know, Josh Simpson. He goes, da 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 da, and you know, he goes, "I'm gonna be something, bro." He goes, I'm gonna do something." And I said, "You know what? I like that." You know, so you know, ever since then, you know, I kind of just had that relationship with him. Then he did his thing at 559, and you know, so I started covering him and doing stuff and posting stuff for him, and then our relationship just grew from that day that I went over there, you know. And so, you know, it's just been like that between me and him.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Abel Rico because you know he's one of the sponsors.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I've recently got to know Abel not too long ago. He's the magician when it comes to having issues with your back, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then same thing like you. Like I said, I've been blessed to know people that I've entered in the fight realm. You know? Can I say fight realm because we met at Big Dog. You know, we were at boxing events together, and now we're doing MMA. So I think of it, and then not only that, I've also been blessed to be in the wrestling community. Yeah. And I'm meeting the right people in the wrestling community too. So I feel like at the end of the day, it's not me. It's nothing to do with me. You know. So I want to ask that. We talked about relationship. What is your relationship like with the Lord, Rick?
You know, like I told you yesterday, you know, I'm a believer, but yeah, I don't. You know, I don't attend church regularly. You know, but I am a believer. You know, I grew up Catholic, still Catholic. You know, but I you know, I could get in tune with the Lord anytime. You know, I don't need to be at church to be in tune with the Lord. You know, so but yeah, definitely. You know, still, you know, like I said, I don't attend church on a regular basis. You know, but I still am a believer.
I'll tell you like this when, and I don't as well. I tell people it's not about religion; it's about relationship. I am not saying do not attend church. Right?
Exactly.
I'm saying have your relationship with the Lord and let the Lord guide you. Yeah. So remember, when there's two or more gathered, we're having church right now.
There you go.
So technically, we have attended church today, right? And just everyone, like you talked about how even when you interact with people and you're, you know, that person's different than this person, that same thing with relationship. Yeah. You know, I feel like at the end of the day, because I'm at where I'm at here doesn't mean that, okay, no, you have to be here either. You know, everyone is different. We all move differently. And I can tell you like this, like I said, Isaiah 60:22, when the time is right, he will make it happen. So just continue to be that way. And I could see that you are blessed. You have a good heart. You know, at the end of the day, you're not going to have a good heart if you don't have the Lord in your life, or, you know, there. And I feel like as I'm meeting these people, I prayed to the Lord. I said, "Hey, remove the ones that are not for me and allow the ones that are still, you know, for me." And we've been good ever since. And I'm telling you, like, I don't really, the thing about me, I think people don't understand is like when things fall off for me, or I'm not talking to somebody no more, we're not aligning, I just pray. Like, meaning, like, I'm gonna pray for them. I'm gonna hope that they do well. What you see on camera is what you see off. I'm
Yeah.
not. I try not to be, because the one thing I always learned is you can never fake the truth. You know,
Exactly.
if you tell a lie, you have to remember, what did I say?
Yeah.
You know, if you're just truthful to yourself, and I feel like, once again, you brought up age. I'm not as young either. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
so new, and I told this yesterday, to shout out to Sergio 559 Fights, youngster,
Yeah.
right? MLH Media, youngster, right?
Yeah.
These kids, but these guys are doing great
Exactly.
in their community. I met
Oh yeah, and definitely like you just said about like Sergio. I met Sergio in San Luis Obispo, about a year ago or so, through Michael, and I met Michael, at 559. But Michael actually grew up not too far, and I actually know his relatives and stuff. So, like, and I try to tell him too, give him a little bit of advice, and because he's really talented at what he does. Obviously he went to school for it, but being the age he is, he's a very young man. He's done with school, but he's had that opportunity. And I told him, and I referred to him one day, after I got to see what he was doing. I'll say, hey, you're gonna be the next Ariel Hawani. And he kind of laughed, but things have gotten so fast for him, right? Like he was in the right place, right time.
Yeah.
And why? Because he does what he does. He's really good at what he does. He's like a walking encyclopedia of MMA, bro. Definitely is. So, and I try to give these guys guidance. And that's what, like with Josh, that's the relationship I have with him too. But
it's always good to be a mentor.
yeah, definitely, because like I said, yeah, we didn't have this structure back then. If I tell my son all the time, I'd be a multi-billionaire today if I had what structure is today at your guys' age. I said, because the opportunities are there. The opportunities, we didn't have these social media platforms in my age. We didn't have all these things available to us. We didn't have world communication. We didn't have outlets that are out here today. And so that's why I had told them. Like I remember we had this conversation. Michael, Isaiah Torres, who takes pictures. Isaiah's another super good kid who has a lot of talent. He's going to school right now. He actually went to school with my nephews. So, another tie.
You know everybody, Rick.
Bro, believe me,
You're the plug.
there's ties everywhere with us in this fight game. That's what's weird, is that like there's just a lot of tie. And so
A lot of
Michael went to school too with my nephews. So
nice.
So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of ties. And I told both of them, like, hey, you guys are in this business now. If you want to really continue in this business, you guys got to look at different things. I said, this ain't a business for everyone. This ain't a business for guys that are married, girlfriends. It's not. I said, because you're going to be everywhere. You're going to be places. You'll be gone a lot. There's just the person that you're going to be with, he just got to be with you down from day one. And then, ride with you, whether it's the highs and lows, because there's a lot of lows in this business. Mm-hmm. There ain't money all the time in this business. People think that this is a glamorous business. Obviously, you're seeing that it's not as glamorous as people think. I think LeVar threw a little bit of that insight too, where he said, people aren't making the money people think they're making.
Yeah.
So, he's been there. He's been a fighter. He's been a promoter. So, he knows that this is not a business where everybody is just cashing in, right? And some of these businesses don't always pay that much.
Yeah.
Right? So, I remember having this conversation with them. I said, so, pick wisely what you're going to do with your career in this atmosphere, right? Is this something that you're going to want to do for the rest of your life? or is this something you're gonna do like me, who this isn't my livelihood.
Yeah. No, yeah.
This ain't my livelihood. This is
Your hobby.
my hobby. So what I do and make, it's my hobby.
I could tell you, like, well, when I left my previous career, which I mean I was doing really well, right?
Yeah,
I assumed certain things were going to be lined up.
yeah,
And so when I took the leap of faith, I took a leap of faith in thinking that, okay, yeah, I'm still new to this industry, but I'm going to have some backing as far as some
yeah,
sponsors and some money coming in. Well, then that fell off. And so lately I've been literally like, it's been a leap of faith because I'm continuing to get the relationships, the networking, the contacts, the podcast,
yeah.
but the money's not there right now.
There you go.
And so I feel like I'm just continuing to trust the Lord because I mean I can make a phone call or two, and probably get back into and I'm gonna have to get back into the workforce for
Yeah,
now, and then the thing is I don't want to be lazy. Like I don't. Sometimes I'll be at home and don't worry, I'll have a podcast lined up
yeah,
or I'll have something going on or we'll have this or that, but I still feel like, man, I'm just here.
yeah,
I'm not really. And then people were like, "Oh, you should start going live more, doing that." That's not me.
yeah.
I'm not. I want to do this. This is what I like to do.
Exactly.
And but now people out there that it can. I feel like my testimony is going to be even bigger
Yeah,
because I could say, "Look, I thought it was going to be this way, and the Lord took me this way." And but where was my faith at? And the whole time it's been in the Lord.
yeah,
And I feel like when I interact with people, I try to be as genuine as I can.
yeah,
And I feel like honestly, I've been blessed. Like, and having, like I said, and I'm just saying it because you're on my podcast, but having people like you, yesterday, the introductions, where I was sitting, I ended up meeting the commentator.
yeah.
She's working for the news, and
Alexa.
I go, hey, and I'm here.
It's
This
funny,
is who
like
I am.
you just brought up Alexa. I met Alexa when she was still a Fresno State student. And I put her onto some game too. So me and Alexa have a good relationship. She wanted to get into because she's a big sport person, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
She's a big sports person, and
Small town girl too. Part
yeah,
of there.
small town girl.
Shout out.
And I remember she wanted to get into, because she did an event at the No Town Throwdown with us, and so she was there assisting the people that we had hired for to do the ring announcing. And so she was still a Fresno State student. And so she hit me up and said, hey, so ask me questions and this and this and that. And then, so, I gave her some knowledge about, what she needed to do. And then I remember there was an event that she wanted to attend that was a pro level fight. And she sent me a message. I think it was on like a Wednesday. The fight was on a Saturday. And then she goes, hey, I didn't get nothing, no response. And I said, oh, you know what? I go, at those events, you can't do that. I said, those events, you got to let them know like a month in advance, 3 weeks in advance. I said, because they select people. I said, they just don't give it to anybody. So she kind of like, oh, okay. So she asked me other questions. And then guess what? Lo and behold, ended up at 559. So, so she tapped in, like you said, asked the right people, asked questions, and, I'm one of those people that I try to help out. I'm not going to hold things and say, oh, no, I'm not going to help that person, because if I can help you get somewhere, then great. Like you said, it's always about paying it forward, giving back. Hopefully, they recognize that, eventually, people make it. Somebody's got to make it up there big.
Yeah.
One of us will eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're always hoping, That's what I tell people, if I could say that I was part of that, that's the best payout in the world, bro.
Yeah.
People don't realize those things, but
Maybe one day we'll be as big as Rogan.
there you go.
Bring
See,
you on,
you
Rick.
just never know.
Yeah.
So being able to chip in just that little bit of knowledge cost me nothing, bro.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
and that's why I try to do, help out a lot of people as much as I can, because like I said, I always refer back to that individual who tapped in on me and said, hey, this is what you got to do, man, because you know a lot about this stuff, and but you got to change yourself into an entity, not that what you are right there. And then, like I said, Richard Ortiz tapped into me too, and so like just people open up, and help you out, so that's what you got to do, bro. And that's where I'm at today, with all
Yeah,
this
no,
stuff.
for
And like I
sure.
said, a lot of people don't realize how the fight game is not. It's just a whole different animal in itself. Where, like, there's a lot of glamour, but people don't understand that there's a lot of really that same blood, sweat, and tears. It's really true, bro. A lot of these guys, you know, put in a lot of time and don't get a lot back, right? They have the glory at the end, but their pocketbooks aren't filled with money all the time, right? And so that's just how it is, and it's in every fight game, regardless whether it's in boxing, MMA, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's going to be some that make it and make money, and then there's just some that just all they get is just fame and glory, but they're working 9 to 5s. They're, it's just how it is, bro.
Yeah, no, it's not as easy as
It's
it
not
looks.
as easy as
Yeah.
it looks. Look, I just had a conversation a few weeks back with a trainer dad who actually has a professional fighter, and I'm not going to say names or nothing. I don't like to drop names, and but this guy's been seen on ESPN. This guy's been seen on HBO. This guy's been seen on some major platforms. And this individual's dad has did tell me like this too. He goes, bro, we both do a lot. We get nothing out of it sometimes. And I said, that's just the love of the fight game, bro. We just love the fight game. He goes, that's true, man. He goes, that is very true. He goes, when I first met you, he goes, that's what I saw too about you. He goes, you just have the love for the fight game regardless. And I go, I didn't get into this for the financial part, bro.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't. I said, because I already know financial wise, it's not, some make it, some don't. I said, I'm fortunate. I just have a great career that I can do whatever I want,
Yeah.
and I don't take a hit financially, but at the same time, you just, you do it for the love, bro. Really, that's it. Maybe, like I said, if you get a couple of dollars in your pocket, great, awesome, right? That's just a few extra dollars I have that I can spend however I want. But if I don't get nothing, but if I actually get to participate and help somebody get to that next level and see a big payout for them, then that's a payout to me, bro.
Yeah, no, I think that the Lord is intentional. So he has me in the fight game for a reason. Because
Yeah.
remember, I'm a podcast. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, I don't just bring on fight, I bring on everybody. So
Yeah.
I think if I am blessed, or I'll manifest it when I make it. I feel like I'll be able to understand it though.
Yeah.
I'll know the struggle and I know what the fighters go through, and then maybe that'll be for me a way to give back down the road. Like,
Yeah. No.
and honestly, I could sit here and say that I would want to, because
Yeah.
when, like I said yesterday, I mean, I know I can't be it. I know I can't be that way.
Yeah.
But as I'm getting more involved and you build the relationships,
Yeah.
and I truly, like I told the Robert and Matthew when they came on, like I can't favor any fighter.
No, you shouldn't.
In the job that I do, I gotta be mutual.
Yes.
Right. And I just hope that they're blessed, no one gets hurt.
Yeah. But I will tell you, like I told you earlier,
You do grow the relationships.
you do grow relationships, and it was awesome to see Matthew actually come.
Yeah.
I've known Matthew for a long time, bro. We talk, not like like hi, bye, hey, handshake, but it was awesome to see him come and give you a hug and tap in with you after the fact that he just went in there, did his thing, didn't get the victory that he wanted, but he still had that to come out and do that, bro.
Yeah.
So that says
No,
a
that
lot.
meant- that meant a lot to me.
That says a lot about him as a fighter, and taking a win and a loss, and then still being able to come out of there not getting the victory, but still come and say hi to you, give you a hug, and thank you for your support, bro. That says a lot about Matthew.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that says a lot about you and the impact that you already had on one of the fighters, bro. So that's how I was telling you. It's about, you grow these relationships whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are. And then part of the, like you said, you want to stay neutral and you want to stay, in that good comfort zone that everybody likes you. But believe me, in this fight game,
Yeah. No,
not
I'm
every,
already realizing
not
that.
everybody's gonna like you.
I'm already realizing that now.
Not everybody's gonna think that you're fair. Not everybody, like I said, I've gotten the late phone calls, messages from all sources, and it's like, hey, you know what? It's not like that. I have no factor in that. No, but you're pushing this fighter. How about my fighter? Or you do this for them and you don't do this for this. It's like, hey, you know what? It's just those relationships you're building, bro. Like currently, I believe, at least in my position where I'm at right now in the fight game, I have a good relationship with a lot of the teams that I do stuff with, the organizations I do stuff with. Um, you know, um, Obviously I've built different relationships with different people, but at the same time, those are the people that open up the doors to me when others weren't opening them to me, right? So, um, so that's just how the fight game is. Like I said, I'm actually very gracious to the people that have opened the doors to me. Like I said, I can go to this event, that event, and not worry about them not wanting me there. And if they don't want me there, then I don't go to the event, right?
Yeah.
That's just part of the fight game, bro. You can't always be making everybody happy. And it's just, you'll figure that out as you grow and you continue in the sport. I learned that a long time ago. It's business. That's just how it is. Even at the highest levels like that, bro.
Yeah.
I'll give you a good example. So I have a friend who has ties to a big organization in boxing, right? And he get tickets anywhere, any event they have, anywhere, right? And I've gone with him places, to events on his being able to tell
connection.
This organization, like, hey, I'll be there. And I remember the specific event. He actually called, and I'll say it, Sam Watson. He called him and said, hey, how much can you give me the X amount of tickets, right? Because there was other people asking him for tickets, and he goes, I'll let you have them. And he goes, no, I'll give you something for them. But he did. He ended up giving them something. But that's the kind of pull he had because he has a great relationship with them. Why? Because he shows them, supports their organization every time they have fights, right? And so some of these guys were ragging and saying, hey, wait. And he actually put all the tickets on a table and showed, this is what I got from them. I paid for these, So, all these other people were hating on him because, he was going to these events. But he was going to these events and he's always actually buying and supporting and giving tickets to people that otherwise sometimes couldn't go to the events.
That's awesome.
See, that's what they didn't know that this guy was doing. So, but he was getting hate because he always went to these, events for that organization. No, the organization saw too what he was doing and they had a relationship with him and they knew what was going on. So that's what I mean. Sometimes you just kind of like don't hate because you don't know the backstory or the back end of what's going on, and so a lot of people, he chooses to be with this or he chooses to be with that. And it's like, it's not like that, man. You as a podcaster, your business is going to rely on people from all different parts of these organizations, and I'm in the same boat too, is that, I go to these different events for different reasons, and I want to be able to be welcome there. But unfortunately, sometimes those relationships sour, That's just how it is. That's just how the fight game is. And I, I wish it could be different, and I think you've already learned and spoke to different people that have probably told you the same thing, but it's not. It's just the fight game, bro. It's just how it is. It's like choosing a team. Either you're with them or you're with us. Unfortunately, that's how it sometimes ends up being with certain factions. But it's not like that everywhere, bro. Like I said, I have a great relationship with 559. I have a great relationship obviously with Beatdown. I do work with Beatdown. Bakersfield Combat. Bakersfield Combat is one of the newest MMA organizations in the Central Valley. Shout out to Carlos Mejia, does a phenomenal job. Those guys, for not having a lot of events, under their belt, are doing some amazing things, bro. They went from having like their first event and then just the same mindset. Like I say, every event you got to make better. They've done that, bro. They literally have just every event gets better and better, And so, I have a great relationship with them and the people that help out running his organization, and all the other ones here locally too. I've helped out, with Big Dog, helped out, when they asked me for, if we got a fighter or something, I've chipped in on that, just, giving back to certain fighters too, but you try to do your best. That's all you can do. And hopefully, they open the doors for you. And obviously you're getting the doors open.
Yeah, no, I've been blessed. Like I said, I believe that I pray on everything. So the ones that are opening and the ones that are closing, I understand that I just have to trust the Lord. And, I feel like at the end of the day, there's no hard feelings on anything. I get it. It's a big political game.
Yeah.
And like you said, choose a side. I choose God, so
go.
I just continue to go. And I feel like wholeheartedly, I want to continue to bring the talent, which is the fighters, and just push them. Whatever organization it's for. At the end of the day, I'm learning. This podcast, it consists of having money. So when we do get certain sponsors, and that's why I said I have my team in place that we have to. I don't want to necessarily be owned by a certain organization or sponsors. So I feel like the Lord will align how He's supposed to align.
And that's always a good way to think, because I'm independent. I do what I want to do. I go to events that I want to be at, and so I'm not. I don't pick, choose sides. I do what I do, because first of all, I'm my own entity. So I do content and do different things. So and I don't talk business when I'm at their events. I don't do stuff to work against their events. I'm actually there to help their events grow and grow their fighters and grow the people that are tapped in with them. So yeah, you just got to be very careful. And like you said, politics, it's going to be in every round of the fight game, regardless of how you see it. And I think you've already seen different little things, and it just happens, bro. I mean, it's just part of the fight game. Unfortunately, whether it's going to be here or on the other side of the world, it's like that,
Yeah.
So.
No, well, I mean, I want to thank you for stopping by. Is there anything else you want to end with before we head off on this part 1 of this podcast?
Well, like I said, we're actually still having our car show, associated to Fight for the Fallen. Central Valley Fallen Heroes is the organization backing that part of the car show. They've been putting a car show on for a long time. There's going to be food, vendors there, cars, classic cars, all types of different cars. They're going to have live bands. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. It's actually at the Club One Casino parking lot. So obviously there's other restaurants there too, that if you don't want to eat the food from the vendors, you can actually eat there or inside the Club One Casino.
Club One Casino has good food.
Definitely they do. Their personal pan pizzas are great, but their all their other stuff is really, really good, bro.
Yeah. Definitely. No, I when they used to be downtown and I worked at the jail, we used to go to Club One a lot, and I used to like to play poker a lot too. So I've ate a lot of their food, so it's good. It's really good. They are now not downtown. They moved to Ashland, right?
Cedar and Ashland,
Cedar and
right there in
Ashland,
Granite Park, in
Granite
that
Park.
Granite Park area where I guess what me and Ed's what did they
Oh,
that's
Coney Island.
yeah, Coney Island. That's what I say. They call themselves a little different
Yeah,
from all the other ones, but yeah, at that Coney Island.
and it's gonna
Me
be
and
on
Ed's.
Saturday, right?
It's gonna be on Saturday,
October 4th.
October 4th in the morning. So
What time
tap
does it
in
start?
early in the morning, 8 o'clock
Oh.
to 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, the 8 o'clock,
8 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
yeah, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sorry about that.
2 in the morning,
But
people are gonna still be gambling. Yeah.
8 in the morning is check in, and then pretty much after that, pretty much 9 o'clock, everything should be going full stream with all the events there going on. So yeah, we're gonna have Lena, which is our our ring announcer. She's gonna be the MC for the event.
She's been on the podcast. Shout
know.
out to Lena.
So I try to take care of my girls. That's my team. I try to take care of her and Laura. As much as I can.
Laura's been on the podcast as well.
Well,
Shout out to Laura.
As far as doing stuff with us. So like I said, it's a team effort with me, bro. I try to take care of the people that take care of me and work with me.
For sure.
So, that's just how I am. So just try to do the right thing with them, and always do that, bro.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rick, for stopping by. And like we start every podcast with a Bible verse, we end with the same Bible verse. And today's Bible verse led us to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verse 26. And I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And Ezekiel 36:26. And with that being said, thank you, Rick, once again for stopping by, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
You're welcome, bro.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Louis.
Have
Thanks
a good
for
one.
having us.
Yes, sir.